Viewers, there's a lot of action happening in Riyadh. It's diplomatic action that we are talking about because the US Secretary of State met the Russian counterpart in Saudi Arabia to negotiate a peace deal in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war and also to better ties between US and Russia. But Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, has stayed out of this meeting, saying that he demands fair talks and nothing else. Here's a report, and then we get you an expert view.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov met in the Saudi capital of Riyadh on Tuesday to discuss the Ukraine war. After the meeting, Marco Rubio told the press that concessions are needed to be made by all sides to end the conflict. He further said that the goal is to bring an end to the conflict in a way that's fair, enduring, and acceptable to all parties involved.
In order to bring an end to any conflict, there has to be concessions made by all sides. We're not going to predetermine what those are. We're certainly not going to negotiate this today or in a press conference for that matter. But and there are other parties that have sanctions. The European Union is going to have to be at the table at some point because they have sanctions as well that have been imposed. So, but I guess the point here is the goal is, and we agreed on what the goal is to bring an end to this conflict in a way that's fair, enduring, sustainable, and acceptable to all parties involved. What that looks like, well, that's what the ongoing engagement is going to be all about.
Rubio also said Russia and the US had agreed to restaff their respective embassies in Washington and Moscow and appoint high-level teams to continue negotiations.
The first next step is working through our respective teams at the diplomatic side, just to ensure that our diplomatic missions can function. There's been a series of reciprocal actions taken over the last 10 years that have really diminished our ability to operate in Moscow, as an example, and they would argue their ability to operate in Washington. We're going to need to have vibrant diplomatic missions that are able to function normally in order to be able to continue these conduits.
The US Secretary said that he is convinced that the Russians are willing to end the war, but said that the ultimate success depends on willingness on every side to end the conflict.
I came away today convinced that they are willing to begin to engage in a serious process to determine how and how quickly and through what mechanism can an end be brought to this war. Whether we can ultimately reach that outcome will obviously depend on every side in this conflict's willingness to agree to certain things. So I think it's important to have this meeting because we haven't really had much engagement with the Russians for almost 3 years, and it sets the table for future conversations.
President Trump has upended US policy towards Ukraine and Russia, saying he and Putin had agreed to begin negotiations on ending the war.
Now, to give us more insights, we have Dheeraj Kaul, a geopolitical expert, joining us live this morning. A very good morning to you, Mr. Kaul. The talks are ongoing in Riyadh, but Zelenskyy, on the other hand, has stayed out of these talks, saying that he demands a fair, share of his demands to be met. So how do you see this negotiations going on? Because there seems to be no end to this war anytime soon.
Namaskar, thank you for having me on the show. I think this is a great move. As President Trump promised during his election campaign, then within the next few days, 2 weeks, he will act decisively to come to bring halt on this bloodshed in Ukraine and Russia. I have personally been to Russia a few times and Ukraine as well. And it's one of the most avoidable wars you can imagine. And it is called destruction and devastation. So the policy has been that we will cut the support to Ukraine for weaponry and push them more towards coming to the table of peace, and as well as European Union, who has been supplying big-time arms and financial aid to Ukraine to put more pressure to Ukraine, as well as talk to Putin so that the war is halted and come to an agreement which is mutually understandable and acceptable to both sides. I think this is a great move, and coming to a neutral country like Saudi, who is friends with Putin and has also good relationship with European Union as time is advancing. So this could not be better timing and a better location. Also, I think US will be looking forward for some support from India as well for further enhancing the negotiations with Russia as well as Ukraine. So I'm very optimistic that this war will come to a pause, and at some point the reconstruction efforts will be restarted in Ukraine with the aid of European Union and rest of the world. And I think that's the need of the hour, because too many lives, like President said, has been lost on both sides. Mind you, this is Ukraine and Russia is like having a fight between local people. They're the same religion, Protestant Christians, same ethnicity, same cultural background, just a little bit of deviation here and there. But there are families which are living, half of them in Russia, half of them in Ukraine. So these are almost similar people. And I think this could not be been asked to be done in a better way than decisively coming to a halt for this war.
Well, Mr. Dheeraj Kaul, please stay on with us, because Donald Trump has issued a reaction in the latest saying that Ukraine should be blamed for this entire scenario that has unfolded there. And he's also rejected Zelensky's demand. Let's play that reaction out and then I'll come back to you.
Russia wants to do something. They want to stop the savage barbarianism. I mean, what's going on over there? It's soldiers are being killed by the thousands on a weekly basis. It's ridiculous. And they're not American soldiers. They're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers largely, although a lot of Koreans have been killed, as you know. Quite a bit of them have been killed. They came over to fight and a large portion have been wiped out. But we want to end it. It's a senseless war. It should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president.
Well, coming back to you, Mr. Kaul, now Donald Trump has blamed Ukraine, clearly saying that it is Ukraine that is responsible for the entire war, even though Russia was the one to invade Ukraine. But somewhere Zelensky feels that, Trump is warming up to, Putin just to safeguard his national interests. So how do you see this going forward? Will there be an end game after all?
I think to put all the blame on Putin would be a little premature. If you go back and look into the trajectory of this war, it was all about Ukraine trying to be a member of NATO, which Trump has outright rejected as of now, that he doesn't believe that Ukraine needs to be a part of NATO to feel protected. There are different ways and mechanisms by which a country could feel protected. So he does agree and has spoken many times that this war could have been totally prevented if Russia was not, felt to be instigated by West. And do you remember how much energy disruption it had caused to the people of European Union? How expensive the energy became because of the dependency on the Russian gas, as well as for geopolitical changes. So I think there is history will judge, and definitely there will be some blame coming towards the approach of Zelensky, because at the end of the day, as a leader of the nation, you don't want hundreds and hundreds of thousands of your youths to be killed by a preventable war. And I do believe this could have been a preventable war, like President Trump said. And it's one of the most ridiculous wars you could think of. So many young soldiers, young families have been destroyed. The country is almost decimated. Same side with Russia as well. So many young people have died. So I do believe that there is not one-sided blame towards Putin. I think they totally failed in negotiation. Unfortunately, we didn't have a world leader, like Trump to negotiate this. But I do personally believe this war could have been avoided if right steps were taken at the right time. But having said that, do remember that Trump is a very good negotiator, and he's going to negotiate the peace from the both sides, from Russia as well as Ukraine. Now, the next step would be reconstruction efforts in Ukraine, which is highly needed. For that, he has already proposed that for further aid, Ukraine has to put some collateral of rare minerals, which is worth in close to hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillion, which Ukraine possesses, has to be like mining rights and stuff could be given. So he already is thinking about where the money can come for reconstruction of Ukraine, which will be costing hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's a right step towards the progress, because this bloodbath has to end. And I'm very optimistic with the next few weeks you will see a very decisive move from both sides. Zelensky is already losing support from local leaders as well, if you go dig deep, because even Ukrainian sane minds and pro-business people, pro-growth people are thinking about how to come to end to this war, how to bring end to this war. And you could not have asked for a better timing. Trump is very well respected by Putin as well when it comes to negotiation, and everybody knows he means business. So we have a very good leverage point here. And like I said, Saudi is in very good relationships with Putin as well as Europe. So I think this could have not been a better timing and a place. But I do anticipate Putin and world will be asking for another some level of negotiation, also coming from India as well, having a world class leader like Modi ji, who has say on both sides. So India would also be able to play some crucial role, which will be very good for the world.
Right, Mr. Kaul, you're optimistic. Donald Trump is optimistic, but it seems like Zelenskyy is not. We'll have to wait and watch whether or not these talks will bear any fruit going ahead. But many thanks for joining us with all those details.